It was kind of funny. One of the things that I see among Glock shooters, this is me on my Glock 43, is if you want to get them up in arms, there's one particular add-on for this that really gets people frustrated. No, it's not the size, it's not the trigger, it's not a stipple job or anything like that. But there's this little guy right here, the Tau Development Group's striker control device. And you want to talk about the striker control device, or what's known as the Gadget. You want to talk about sending Glock people into a tizzy talking about its validity or not. That's a great way to do it. So you obviously have seen I have one on my Glock 43, and I want to talk about why.
Want to be a better defensive shooter in 2018? Join the ASP Dry Fire Challenge by joining our Facebook group and by subscribing to the Active Self-Protection Extra channel for weekly lessons on getting better with your defensive firearm.
So you guys know that Hermia, my Glock 43, has a whole bunch of modifications to it. It has been worked over pretty good. Got a stipple job, double undercut, has a Trigicon HD sights on it, also has a little bit of polishing in the trigger job and a minus connector in it. Keeps it at the same weight but makes it a little smoother. And I have installed a Gadget on this gun, and this is what this is designed to do. Okay, it was designed by Todd Lewis Green, was probably the idea and the impetus behind it before his passing away. And what that was for was that so that a Glock in particular, they only make them for Glocks right now, Glock, all generations, and 42 and 43 each have their own. And what it was designed to do is it was designed to turn this gun in that moment that you're holstering it into the same level of safety that you would get out of a double action hammer fired gun. Now let me show you how it does that. So you can see that this is an empty gun. I verified that the chamber is empty as well. So we are going to holster the gun now, okay? So let's say we're about to holster the gun. And when this happens, is when I see people, when the gun goes into the holster, is when they have problems. It's when the gun starts giving them a hard time. And that's when negligent discharges occur, either when the gun is coming out of the holster or when it's going back into the holster. We'll talk about coming out of the holster in a minute. But when it's going back into the holster, what can happen here is that if you don't clear your holster, I always tell people look their gun into the holster, but if you don't clear your holster visually and tactilely, you might get maybe a piece of your cover garment in there or something like that. Then as the gun's going into the holster, if that thing gets it and continues to press on that, you can smash that gun in the holster, especially people who are speed holstering a gun, and make the gun go off because something impacted it. Now, if you look closely, what you can see here is you can see this moving back as the striker moves back, as the linkage moves backwards, the transfer bar. What you're going to see there is that comes up until the gun discharges, and you can see it all the way back there, and then it releases. So what happens here is that if I put thumb over it, so if I just depress it like this, it's time to put the gun in the holster. I've done all the pew-pew I need to, so then I'm going to put the gun in the holster. So I put my thumb over it, and now guess what? If I try to move this, it won't move, because see how that has to move to do that? It doesn't do that, so it can't do that at all. So the way that this works is, of course, is that I'm going to go ahead and do all the pew that I need to. I got done with all the pew that I need to do. Whew, now I'm going to take my time. Now you guys know I carry appendix, right? So, you know, everybody's, oh, you're going to shoot your junk off. Whatever. I'm not going to shoot my junk off because I'm going to do things safely. However, when I get here, I visually clear my holster. I use my thumb over, and then I can set the gun into the holster, and there's no way that that striker can drop, and there's no way that the gun can go off, and that's the real advantage of the striker control device. It makes this just a little bit safer, one more layer of protection with respect to holstering a firearm. Now, I gotta be real, I'm actually a convert to being a believer in the striker control device. When it first came out, I was like, gosh, man, why don't you just not, why don't you just do all the other things carefully? Why don't you just make sure that your cover garment's clear? Why don't you just make sure that everything's right? Why don't you just, not point a gun at yourself and you won't have a problem? And all of those things are true, but I'll tell you what changed my mind. As I talked with some really clueful friends, what I really came to realize is the fact that holstering the firearm is an administrative action. It is something that is never done in a hurry. You never have to put the gun away fast. And it is one of the times that is absolutely most dangerous with the firearm, because you are taking the firearm from pointing down range, which is ostensibly safe or whatever, and you are putting it in the holster, and whether or not you're doing that strong side or you're doing an appendix or even, God forbid, small back, putting it away in a pocket or whatever, this is the time where bad things happen. This is where bad things go down. So you want to take your time. You want to follow your safety procedures. Never point a firearm at something, at any unsafe direction, including yourself, not a safe direction. And what the Gadget provides is there's no real downside to it, but what it does provide is the opportunity for one more layer of safety with respect to, holstering a firearm, which is an administrative action. So at the end of things, I was like, okay, makes sense to me. I think it's valuable, so I bought one for my Glock 43. In many ways, the striker control device makes this gun just as safe, a Glock that has one attached, as this gun here. This is my P30, this is Benvolio. It's got a LEM trigger, and again, you can see right here, has a hammer, right? Now, it's not a traditional double action hammer, but every time I pull the trigger, again, you can see this guy's got a barrel block, also a mag block in it. So what happens here is that the hammer goes back when I pull the trigger and has to come all the way back and then drop from there. So this isn't traditional double action because it's a LEM trigger, but you get the point, right? So again, same thing. If I put my thumb over, the hammer cannot move. It can't drop back. And of course, I get the feel of that. If something were to impact it, I'd feel it on my thumb and get to stop that before the gun went in the holster. So the classic holstering with a traditional double action, or even a single action only where it's cocked and locked, right? So if it's cocked and locked, the hammer's back all the way, and then I use my thumb to sit over the top of it, and God forbid something happens, it won't fall, and I can stop it right there, get everything put away and all that stuff, and get it fixed. Your standard way of holstering with a traditional double action gun is everything's done. Again, we're in administrative work here. There's nobody that needs to get shot. We're gonna look our gun into the holster. So we pull our cover garment up, we clear visually. I still have some chub, I'm working on it. Okay, you look, yep, that's clear. I tap the outside of my holster to make sure that it is not pointing at me in any capacity. I step my strong leg back. Now, I'm gonna put my thumb over the hammer, so if God forbid I miss something, it doesn't have any problems. Put the gun in the holster and safely snap it into the holster. It gives me an extra layer of protection. Now this is my everyday carry. This is John Talbot, my VP9. Haven't switched over to Benvolio yet. Still working on some things with that. But I don't have that. Unfortunately, they don't make a striker control device for the HK VP9 yet. So far, only Glocks. I've asked them, but I get how that goes. So when I reholster this guy, I got to do it the old-fashioned way with a striker gun, right? Now, I still actually utilize the thumb over methodology just because I want to be consistent. But again, get done with all the pew-pew, and now I've just got to be extra super careful to clear my holster, visually look, step my leg back, tap the outside so it's not pointing at me, slide it in safely, don't point the gun at myself, and then go to work. That's how you safely holster the gun without something like a striker control device. So at the end of the day, on a little gun like Hermia, my Glock 43, why not, man? An extra layer of safety, I don't see a problem with it. Do you absolutely need it? Well, I think if you're super careful, you should never have a problem. But the problem is that we're not always super careful and mistakes can happen. And so having an extra layer in an administrative act, because I want the gun to be chambered, the gun has to stay chambered. You guys have seen in the narrated videos how many times when the gun comes out of the holster, you got to really go after it. And why not have a little bit of extra bit though when the gun with a round in the chamber is going back in the holster as an administrative action. One extra bit that it gives me as well that works well whether you're using a traditional double action gun, a LEM trigger like I happen to have on right now with Benvolio, or a Glock with the striker control device, is if you're using the thumb over the rear sight draw method, it makes that a little safer as well and can help you prevent an unintended negligent discharge while the gun is on the way out of the holster. Again, the gun coming out of the holster is one of the more dangerous times as well, because I see people creep their fingers in the trigger way too fast, and I see that all the time. So here's what I'm talking about. I gotta go do my thing. Oh no, somebody needed to get shot. I pull my cover garment up. Now, for beginning students, I teach take that thumb and grab a full firing grip, drive that thumb back behind, and get a full firing grip. What I find when you get into the intermediate and advanced level of shooting is that really ends up slowing you down. So what I see most of the faster shooters do, what I've started doing as well, is when they get that, they're gonna get thumb over, but not completely over. They're kind of on the inside here of their rear sights. Now my rear sights are forward of my RMR, but if you had rear sights here, it's kind of on that. Now what that does, as you can see, is that puts me on that hammer, and I can't pull this trigger without feeling it. So it keeps me from pulling the trigger and putting my, get myself in trouble. I can put my finger on the trigger, but I can't pull the trigger all the way to the rear, and that moves when the gun comes up. I put two hands, I drive it out, feel my sights, and go to town. Or if I'm in a retention position, I come back to a thumb pectoral index, which again is like this, bang, 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 so that slid it off there like that. So whether I have a hammer-fired gun like this, or if I had a Glock with a striker control device, does exactly the same thing. Here, if I put this away, and we see it, we do it the same way we always do. So again, as I'm gonna go get it, as the gun comes out, I still have that here, and God forbid if I pulled the trigger because I'm an idiot, and I have my feet down below me, and the gun doesn't go off until I get up to where I'm okay with two hands on the gun. Now I'm off of that hammer, or I'm off the striker control device, see my sights, and go to town. So the Gadget on my little Hermia, yeah, I think it was a good addition. Do you gotta have it? Well, I mean, you don't have to. Is it a good idea? I think so. Is an extra layer of safety for like 70 bucks worth it? I think so. Why do people get upset about it? I don't know. I think that it makes them feel like, well, they're not safe enough on their own, or they don't practice safe firearms handling. But the reality is, I see an awful lot of unsafe firearms handling in the range and in the self-defense world. So having a little bit of extra safety through something like the striker control device, no brainer in my book.